Hello, welcome to Clarity Design. We're looking at After Effects CC, and we're particularly interested in how we can import Illustrator files and Photoshop files into the software so that we can use them. At the moment you can see I've got composition set up, it's 24 frames, it's a HD size, and we are ready to start adding our own parts into this project panel. So how do we do this? Let's have a double click to add something. You can see I've got set up here my sample pictures. I've got a couple here. Now if I select desert or one of the other images, it just allows me to import it as footage. So if I click import, you can see here it's just an image, drag it down, single image. I've got the ability to move it around, edit it and animate it using the controls, but apart from that I haven't got any other choices here. So let's double click again, and this time we will try and well, I'll tell you what, let's go to Illustrator, which I've got open, and let's copy and paste these lines, these paths that I've got here. So these are actually paths rather than an image. So let's Control C, and going back into here, let's click on the desert and Control V. Now what we've got happening there is it is applied those vectors as a mask. Okay, so you can see the image through, and if I go into here I can start having a look at the masks that I've got here, and I can play around with them until I'm happy. Alright, so I've got some masks to play around with, but that's not actually always what I want. You can also import paths or vectors as paths so that you can move objects along them as well. So if you want to get a complex cycle, often it's easier to design it in Illustrator and move it across. So that's one way to use images from Illustrator. Let's get rid of that for a second, and this time we'll double click and we will try doing this import here. So you can see here from lines, it gives me three options. I've got footage, same as before, and that will I've got merge layers or choose layers, so I can select a specific layer from that document if I want to, but I can also put it in as merge layers, and you can see that's just the vector art there. So if I drag that down, you won't be able to see it because it's black on black. So let's just make a new solid layer there. That'll make things a little bit easier for us. Put that behind, so just dragging and dropping that behind it, and I've got my images in there. Now that's great, but again I can't manipulate those as separate parts or anything. So let's go again, double click, and this time we'll select lines, and this time we will go to composition. We can retain layer styles, or we can just go in as a composition. Now retaining layer styles is quite useful, particularly when you've got Photoshop stuff. In this case we haven't got any, so we're just going to pull it in as a composition. So, and as I pull that in as a composition, you can see that my composition lines is here, and I've also got this new thing called lines layers, where I can see the different layers. Again, it's displaying on black background there, so you can't see it, but you can see the different layers. Now if I go into the lines composition, I double click, that will open it up down the bottom, and you can see, again, I need to just put a new background in. I shouldn't have chosen black on white. So solid layer there, that's a right click to do that, by the way, and to go and find a new layer, so you can see them there. Now this means that I can again I can play around with each of these objects. Now the difference here is, unlike before, now I can move and manipulate each one as a live image. Alright, so that's really nice. It means the design that's come across can now be individually manipulated. Now inside this particular composition I can manipulate or animate something that later on I can put into here. So let's get rid of these two here. Well, we'll keep the white solid, we'll get rid of that one. We'll go into lines, and let's just edit this line coming in. So we'll just move that out to the side. We'll start the position, and then I will move it to here, and then I will move that line into here. So we can just see this very simple bit of animation just starting to come together here. Alright, so over in here, if I put this lines composition into composition 1, I've already got that animation happening in there, and here you can see the power of having compositions within compositions. We can do the same in reverse that I've just done by adding something called a pre-compose. and we can cover that in another tutorial, but pre-compose basically allows you to take a number of layers from one composition and pre-compose it out to a different composition like this, and then to animate that little bit separately. I can still animate the full composition in here. I've got the same controls as I've always had, but I can also animate within that. It's quite a powerful tool. We'll come to it in more detail another time. In the same way as I've done it with Illustrator, I can do exactly the same thing with a Photoshop file. Again, I can choose footage if I just want the flat footage, or I can choose composition and import. Now, these two things, these two options, editable layer styles and merge layer styles into footage, are important. If you read underneath, it says editable layer styles matches the Photoshop appearance, supported by style properties to be fully editable. But the problem is, if you are using a layer that is becoming 3D, these won't interact nicely with it. Whereas if you merge the layer styles together, it allows for 3D intersections.